And we are rolling on November 16th? 16th, a Thursday, which is in 2017, where we're about to debate question number 15 on our list. The U.S. should unilaterally reduce carbon emissions regardless of whether other countries cooperate. I repeat, the U.S. should unilaterally reduce carbons regardless of whether other countries cooperate. And we'll now hear from the Prime Minister for a speech not to exceed 6 minutes in length. Mr. Prime Minister, you may begin.
This represented is in the policy in the case of the affirmative. The definition of unilaterally is an action or decision performed by or affecting only one person, group, or country involved in a particular situation without agreement of another or the others. Reducing carbon emissions, the total amount of greenhouse gases produced directly and indirectly support human activities usually expressed in equivalent tons of carbon dioxide. Well, what is the problem? According to a Harvard Science Department study done in 2015, there are both natural and human sources of carbon dioxide emissions. Natural sources include decomposition, ocean release, and respiration. Human sources come from activities such as cement production, deforestation, burning fossil fuels and coal, and oil and natural gases. Well, carbon emissions are affecting the Earth at a rapid pace that if action is not taken, it could damage the Earth to the point where it cannot be repaired. The problem also is that certain developing countries cannot come to a collective agreement, so it's up to the United States to act unilaterally. Things that can affect humans and other animals in the Earth may become too hot to where life as we know it cannot be able to be sustained. According to NationalGeographic.com, some diseases such as mosquito-borne malaria, the Zika virus as we know in Brazil, is happening due to global warming. According to the EPA.gov, global warming is harming the environment in several ways, including desertification, increased melting of snow and ice, sea level rise, and stronger storms and extreme events. Carbon emission is one of the main problems according to Duke University. A rise of just a few degrees in world temperatures will have a dramatic impact on the climate. According to a study done by New York Times in 2016, China stands head and shoulders above other countries in green gas output. Starting in the 1990s, emissions leaped by 2007. It had overtaken the United States as the world's biggest carbon dioxide polluter. In the United States, while the United States was the biggest polluter over a century. In 2015, China released almost 10.4 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide, and that's about 29% of the total emissions worldwide, while the United States was at 5.4 billion in 2015. The problem is, however, is that this statistic was actually done after China had made a promise to cut back on their carbon emissions. So how can we trust a government that made a promise to cut back, but then it's become the world's biggest polluter? That shows that we need to act unilaterally, otherwise the world as we know it is going to end or cease to exist. How big is this problem? Carbon dioxide persists in the atmosphere for 50 to 200 years, so emissions released now will continue to warm the climate in the future. The EPA predicts that climate change will cause the demand for water to increase while the water's supply will shrink. Global warming has potential to result in more wildfires, droughts, and tropical storms. According to NASA, catastrophic weather events caused $1 billion alone in damage in the United States during 2012, such as Hurricane Sandy. If we do not solve this problem by ourselves, this means that we will inevitably cause living conditions which will harm humans' overall health. In Beijing, for instance, almost every person wears a mask to try and prevent inhaling toxins into their bodies due to pollution. This was caused in part due to trying to imitate the U.S. by becoming the top industrial nation and getting rid of the EPA. There are days in which the government warns its citizens to stay inside because of things such as orange smog and the fact that pollution is too high in some days. According to USnews.com 2014, while the short-term effects of air pollution are concerning, its long-term consequences are what really worry researchers. In 2014, 3 million people worldwide died from air pollution-related health effects, while in China, more than 1 million people lost their lives, the highest number of any country. This shows that if we do not take the steps to reduce our carbon emissions, we will suffer the same fate as other developing countries are. Why do we have this problem? Well, we have this problem because every nation is trying to become a powerhouse and lead the world in the most important lucrative fields such as mining, fossil fuels, creating more businesses, which in part requires releasing things such as carbon emissions, and also creating booming agriculture. According to CNN in 2015, China and India are expanding their economies at a rapid pace that's unsustainable, which involves things such as car factories and other technological factories that produce carbon emissions. The other reason why we have this problem is because no one wants to be last in the race to become the richest, most powerful country. Since power is moving further away from military power and toward technology, this is increasing carbon emissions even more. Well, what is the solution? This means that we'll have to cut back on creating petrol-induced cars and lead to electric cars. Even though producing electric cars requires coal, in the long run, it's going to reduce our carbon emissions because they run on electricity. We also have to cut back on animals, killing animals, and the amount of animal products we create due to greenhouse emissions. And also, we have to find a more lucrative way and a more reliable way, such as public transportation, which makes it more enticing for people everyone to use. Will this solution work? Yes, this solution will work. The reason why is because scientists all around the world are coming together to express to every country that global warming is happening. And if we do not act swiftly, everyone can be hurt by it. Therefore, the United States, looked upon as being one of the strongest leading nations, it is up to us to implement plans to help this world. This will, if it will work, because everything I stated can help the economy, because if we cut back on such things such as getting rid of coal mines and carbon emissions, those help actually health problems that are caused by pollution, such as cancer, asthma, respiratory infections. And since in the United States alone, 44 million people are uninsured, they go to the hospital, to the ER, in which our taxpayer money is paying for this. So if we cut back on this and less people go to the hospital or go to the ER, we can use this money to eliminate carbon emissions. What are the advantages to my proposal? The health of people will improve, the environment will be more sustainable, the future generation will have a place on which they can live, and the economy can improve as a whole. The use of fighting carbon emissions really outweighs waiting to do as a collective group, because we've seen throughout history that past promises countries are not willing to compromise on short-term monetary gain for the long-term effects. I now stand for cross-examination.
Thank you very much. Stay up there in the center, please.
Okay.
And move those chairs way out of the way. They're ruining the picture. Hey, your time started a long time ago, so you're wasting
Oh, sorry.
it.
Hi, my name's Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Hey. So, Brandon, you said that the Earth could be damaged to the point where it cannot be repaired. Do you know? Did you answer this question in a yes or no format?
Yes.
You know that's. Okay, you said that. And you also said that. Well, if I may ask, in a yes or no format, you did. Are you 100% sure that the world is going to cool or cease or end or cease to exist?
This was according to the Harvard study and the Duke study.
Okay, all right. So do you know, for example, what percentage of human activity or what percentage of carbon emissions is responsible for the rising climate? And this is
No, you cannot actually predict this. Well, you just know that it affects, but it's hard to check on a global scale how that happens.
And do you have any clue what we have to do in order to minimize human activity, so as to go back to the amount of carbon that were being sent into the atmosphere before the industrial age?
Yes, I actually stated that. I said such as things as reducing the greenhouse emissions, such as not killing as much animals, and also using electrical vehicles, switching from petrol, because that actually puts in too much carbon emission to the atmosphere. So if we switch to things such as Tesla.
Look at me, not him, remember? I'm the guy you persuaded.
So that worked.
Okay, all right. And how many people are you willing to impoverish based on lack of carbon-based fuels? This is where our third word.
Can you say that one time?
How many people are you willing to impoverish based on lack of carbon-based fuels?
In this case, then we're going to have to look at the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few and see if we can make this world more sustainable for the future generation.
And how many people are you willing to let suffer in order to do this in the third world, by the way? Because those are the people who are going to suffer if they're not using carbon-based fuels.
I think I just answered your question. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and in the case of the future generations, this is what we'll need to do. And I'm willing to sacrifice it.
Repetition. And regarding what you said about carbon emissions, did you know that solar energy?
Thank you very much. We'll now hear from the leader of the opposition for a speech not to exceed 6 minutes in length. Begin.
Hey, hello, my name is Paul, and
Move over that way a little bit. Yeah, you're in the picture. Thank you. Good.
Okay. Hello, my name is Paul, and I am on the
Hi, Paul.
Hi. I'm on the negative side of this debate, and I, for the most part, agree with the criteria and definitions set forth by my opponent. My resolution is that the U.S. should not unilaterally reduce carbon emissions, regardless of whether China, India, and developing countries cooperate. For purposes of repetition, this proposition is to be presented as a policy case in the negative. So what's the problem? The problem is that the threat that carbon emissions supposedly poses may be taken out of proportion and is arguably causing unwarranted widespread panic. Now, this is my assertion. The reason why I think this way is because this may cause individuals to make rather uninformed decisions to impulsively support leftist causes regarding carbon emissions, such as Jerry Brown's recent 12 cent per gallon gas tax increase. To support this assertion, I would like to share this excerpt, which was stated in April 2016 by Richard Lindzen, who is a professor of atmospheric sciences at MIT. There are many reasons why climate changes: sun, clouds, oceans, the orbital variations of the Earth, as well as a myriad of other inputs. None of these is fully understood, and there is no evidence that CO2 emissions are the dominant factor. And given the complexity of climate, no confident prediction about future global mean temperature or its impact can be made. The IPCC acknowledged in its own 2007 report that the long-term prediction of future climate states is not possible. So what I get from this is that carbon emissions may not be so much of an urgent issue that leftists make it out to be. And one thing to note is that even though carbon emissions are present in this world, it still gets colder in some places. For example, Dylan Dwyer for Boston.com stated in November 2017 that Boston is experiencing record-breaking cold temperatures as it broke a 116-year record, and the temperature dropped to 23 degrees. Maybe this is why leftists change the narrative from global warming to climate change. With this taken into account, it may be safe to say that it would benefit individuals to be critical of the supposed deleterious effects of carbon emissions before making decisions to support certain causes regarding carbon emissions. So how big is the problem? The problem is quite significant because there are many people in this country and countries all over the world who are supporting this narrative that carbon emissions are an urgent threat to humanity. Why do we have this problem? We have this problem because mainstream media outlets such as MSNBC and leftist institutions of higher education keep on supporting this narrative that the rise of carbon emissions are an alarming issue and something to be very concerned about. So the solution's simple. People should listen to and allow individuals with differing viewpoints, such as conservative commentator Ben Shapiro, to share their perspectives on how to deal with carbon emissions, and to make sure that people have an opportunity to do this. It should be made into law that public universities in the U.S. can be fined or penalized if they discriminate against conservative speakers from speaking in their campuses. So will the solution work? The solution will work because many people may become open to the concept that carbon emissions may not be as significant of an issue as leftists make it out to be, and support the idea that the U.S. should not unilaterally reduce carbon emissions regardless of whether other countries cooperate. What are the advantages to my proposal? One advantage would be that individuals may be more educated as to the possible effects of carbon emissions. My reasoning for this is that individuals would be exposed to differing views of carbon emissions. To support my assertion and reasoning, it may be helpful to note that Patrick Moore, co-founder of Greenpeace, stated in July 2015 that temperatures and carbon dioxide levels do not show a strong correlation. In fact, over very long spans, periods of hundreds of millions of years, they are often completely out of sync with each other. Over and over again, within virtually any time frame, we find the climate changing for reasons we do not fully understand. But we do know there are many factors in play than simply the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere, factors such as the shape and size of the Earth's elliptical orbit around the Sun, activity from the Sun, and the amount of wobble or tilt in the Earth's axis, among many others. Even the relatively short 300-year period from the peak of the Little Ice Age to the present has not been steady. The latest trend has been a warming one, but it began nearly a century before. There were significant carbon dioxide emissions from burning fossil fuels. And there has been no significant warming trend in the 21st century, contrary to media headlines. The trend over the past couple of decades has been essentially flat. So meanwhile, human-caused CO2 emissions are higher than ever. About 25% of all CO2 emissions from human sources have occurred during this period of no net warming. So what are we in for next? Will the temperature resume an upward trend? Will it remain flat for a lengthy period? Or will it begin to drop? No one knows, and I am the biggest, fastest computers. Another advantage would be that people will be skeptical of the dangers of carbon emissions promoted by leftists, and may no longer feel guilty for using carbon-based fuels for everyday activities such as driving, cooking, and doing laundry. Another advantage would be that people
Your time's up. I now stand open for cross-examination. Thank you. Stand in the middle of the frame, please. Move over.
Oh, we have 1
Oh,
minute.
I thought you said
I
time.
said 2.
You have 1 minute left. Sorry, go on.
Thanks. So, an advantage would be
Louder there, timer.
An advantage would be that people could leave out the issue of carbon emissions from their list of priorities, focus more on issues that are arguably more important and dire than carbon emissions, such as how children in other countries are dying from starvation or preventable diseases. This could be supported by how in 2010 UNICEF estimated that an average of 25,000 children under the age of 5 are dying each day, most of the causes of preventable with low-cost proven interventions. This may also make the case for why certain carbon-based fuels should be utilized to improve the circumstances for hungry families in third world countries on balances which outweighs by not unilaterally reducing carbon emissions, regardless of whether other countries cooperate. The United States puts itself in a position to focus on what are arguably more important issues such as lifting people out of poverty. While this may result in leftists viewing the United States unfavorably, it is still not in the best interest of the United States to unilaterally reduce carbon emissions regardless of whether China, India, and developing countries cooperate. And I now stand open for cross-examination of points of clarification.
Thank you, Paul. Sorry I interrupted you. Go ahead.
All good.
I have a question. Do you believe that carbon emissions do have an effect on the environment? Yes or no, please?
Yes, they do. And would it be okay if I elaborate on it?
No. So basically, if we're going back to your question, you're saying they do have it, but this whole time you're saying that the U.S. that they're acting as if the leftists, which I'd like to get into that later, stated that this thing does not exist. But if we're going over our prompt, it says should we act unilaterally? It's just not if we should act on it, or it's just that the U.S. should act on it alone. So going to another.
So the answer, no, we should not act.
I was just saying that you weren't going through that. You say that may not be pressing issue. Would you say that it's still an issue? You say that reducing carbon emissions is not a pressing issue when you're debating. You said that but would you say it's still an issue? Let Lisa know.
Yes.
Then I think that this is contradicting your argument then. That if you're saying that if it's not a pressing issue, but then you're saying that it's still an issue, and then you're saying that it's not that serious. But would you say that it's serious? Would you say that it's not?
I mean, it could be an issue, and we could still not unilaterally reduce carbon emissions. We can do that, right?
Yeah, you could unilaterally, but you weren't arguing that we should reduce it unilaterally. You weren't arguing that the other time, but it's fine.
Yeah, whether it's an issue or not, just to make sure that my answers are nuanced, whether it's an issue or not, we should not reduce carbon emissions unilaterally. The United States should not do that. Okay,
and you say that the leftists are the ones arguing that carbon emissions have a big effect on the environment. Would you say that only leftists are arguing this? For instance, Elon Musk, who does not identify with any party, says that this is a big pressing issue, who is the creator of Tesla and founder of, not founder of electrical vehicles, but is one of the promoters. So, would you say that he's not a leftist? Is he wrong?
Well, I never said only leftists.
You were saying that the whole time.
No,
you said leftists.
I didn't say only leftists. But I did say leftists.
Leftists, in asserting that only leftists believe this. Well, would you say that anybody else? Okay, would you say that anybody else? Would you say that they're wrong too, who are not leftists? Is propaganda that you're stating?
And they're allowed to think what they think.
Okay.
Thanks, Brian.
Good. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Can we go?
Okay, time for rebuttal.
Rebuttal?
Rebuttal, yes.
So, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So going back to his statement with the rebuttal,
he said
that basically the environment is not affected by carbon emissions to a large extent. Well, once he stated his scientific facts, and you're right that it is impossible to calculate how much it happens. I mean, how much of a big effect it has. But if you go to, for instance, China, with what's happening right now, such as I stated, the orange smog and the pollution that's happening that killed over 1 million people, I think this contradicts the same assertion that you're making. Because if people are dying due to air pollution, and the fact that people are coughing out black tar of their mouth, I think this contradicts that it's not a big problem. And I would also want to know, what is a big problem? To what extent do you calculate something as being significant? Because to me, if there's 1 million people that suffer from dying, that's a pretty big problem to me. Also, you stated that that right now there's more pressing issues such as people dying across country not due to those things. Are you saying those things can't be mutually exclusive? Are you saying that they are mutually exclusive? Can't we just worry about both things at the same time? Because one, like we said, the pollution leads to cancer, such as asthma, which are already in ways could be possibly just deterred by the fact that we release carbon emissions. So
for all these reasons, I believe
the U.S. should unilaterally reduce carbon emissions regardless if other countries cooperate.
Thank you so much. Okay, and we'll hear a 2-minute rebuttal from the member of the opposition.
Alright, so I'll go. So yeah, just to make sure, I guess, guess my friend Brandon said that. He said that I said that. He said that I said that. I didn't.
Great movie title.
That the climate was not affected by carbon emissions. I did say that it was affected, but we just don't know what. I don't know like what percentage, and my sources don't know what percentage is affected. So that's for clarity purposes. And just to repeat, so my opponent states that he does not know what percentage of human activity or what percentage of carbon emissions is responsible for the rise in climate. He doesn't know the exact percentage. And with that, I'll disagree that carbon emissions are causing as much harm as my opponent implies. I understand that, yes, he did mention that, I guess, people in China, they are suffering from pollutants, but pollutants can be differentiated from carbon emissions. And so he does not have any sufficient evidence to back his claim that the carbon emissions are not causing much harm. And my assertion is correct that there is no conclusive evidence as to the exact amount of damage carbon emissions are causing to the environment. My opponent states that reduction of carbon fuels will benefit society. I disagree. Reduction of carbon-based fuels will not benefit society because many impoverished people in the third world will benefit from carbon-based fuels. Starving kids in Africa. The U.S. So therefore, the U.S. should not unilaterally reduce carbon emissions regardless whether China and India and developing countries cooperate. And it seems my opponent seems to state that reduction of carbon-based fuels is moral. I disagree. Reduction of carbon-based fuels is not moral because reduction of carbon-based fuels used for appliances would immediately lower the quality of life for people living in poverty. And reduction of carbon-based fuels is immoral because of the negative impact it would have in the impoverished.
Thank you very much. It's now time for you to take a seat and wait for the audience to make their decision. And it's now time for you to, let's give them a nice round of applause for airing this issue. And let's now give everybody a chance to, you've already filled out your ballot, so now the only thing to do is to declare a winner, fill out the points. Usually the winner gets high of around 80 and the loser gets somewhere around 75 is our standard, but you can do any, say, from 1 to 100. It's a free country. People are dying in Iraq and Syria, so you have freedom, so do enjoy it. And I'm going to...
Wait a minute, you want to check the
May I have the ballots, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Where is Bruin after that? Are you cold? Okay, do I have them all? No? Yeah, no more. Do I have them all? Let's see if I can figure it out. Oh, okay. Let's do it by the points. Remember to fill in the decision at the bottom, please. On an 11-2 decision, it goes to the government that we should unilaterally reduce our carbon emissions regardless of whether other countries cooperate. I would, since it was so one-sided, if Bianca and Miriam, if I could single them out, if you wouldn't mind saying why you voted with the opposition, I would be interested in hearing your position. And there's no harm in you were the minority. And I want to say a few things about the debate, and then we'll move on to the next one. So stand up for.
Hi, Miriam.
Hi, Miriam.
I liked how Paul used examples when he was like saying his advantages, and he just went through like all the evidence for it in the advantages.
Yeah.
So I thought that was persuasive.
Yeah. Okay. So you just found him more persuasive than Brandon.
Yeah, because of the way it was in the.
Stay up there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. And who was the other one I said? Was Miriam and Bianca. Where's Bianca? Okay, Bianca, rock and roll. Yeah, can you lose the hat? Can't? No? Bad hat day? No, you don't have to. You don't have to.
Really bad hair day.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
today. Another time.
Good hat, good hair day, huh?
Yeah. You had an uphill battle, dude. So mad props. I think you did the best you could have. Again, with like what was very clearly kind of a pretty biased debate before the get-go. The only reason I gave it to Brandon was because like I thought the quality of his evidence was better. Like I thought you both put forward really compelling arguments, but you had me at Harvard study. So other than that, dude, you killed it.
Okay. Let me say a couple of things. One thing I would like, just and it's for you too, but just for everybody, more of a, well, let's start at the top. I'd like a criterion for how we decide a winner on in the definitional area, everybody, a cost-benefit analysis or something, or on balance, and that should be part of that up top thing. I didn't think we really needed too many definitions in this debate. I didn't really, and he said he agreed with them, so they weren't an issue. So I think you could have picked up some more time to go with more of your stuff. But I thought, and what was so interesting. Did anyone read the Daily Bruin article from the MIT professor that was here that said global warming is fake? Last Tuesday in the Daily Bruin. Did anyone see it? Did you see it, or did you see the article? Yeah, they invited this really prominent emeritus professor, and they said, "You can speak on anything you want. You're so learned and wonderful." And so he surprised me. He says, "Well, I'm going to speak on." And when he got there, he says he shocked them all. He says, "I'm going to speak on the phoniness of climate change." And these guys about had a heart attack because they go, "Oh my God!" And they couldn't uninvite him. He was already there, so they let him speak because after all, he'd won all these prizes, and he was an MIT professor and had a couple hundred articles the same way that Lyndon had, and I'll share that with everybody, but it was real interesting. He talked about the fact that one of the things that a lot of us know is there's a consensus, and we know what's wrong with that, right? And then someone else said they didn't say the Harvard study, which you say Harvard. Everyone bows down to Harvard. You should watch my film if you want to see what I think of Harvard. Anyway, you use that to your benefit. just between you and me and the fence post, I think you overclaimed the Harvard study, but I admire you for getting a lot out of it. Okay? I think you summarized it nicely. Paul, what I want to say to you about what I think rhetorically you didn't capitalize on effectively enough was, I think first off, everyone in the room here is a leftist. Or liberal, shall we say.
Yeah, me too, but I just...
Yeah, right? And so, name calling and it's just, it just started off on a bad tone. All these leftists. You sounded like this paranoid guy. These leftists are out there getting us. And so I think that was kind of a problem. But I think there's a grain of truth to what you're saying, despite that. Because I do think there is a lot of overclaiming of the evidence, as this MIT professor pointed out. And, Jerry Brown thinks he's master of the universe now,
He-Man.
making things with other countries and stuff like this. But you point out that we had warning before we had the industrial age. So how do you explain that? And we had no answer from that. That was a good point. But all your stuff of constantly couching it in leftist rhetoric was counterproductive. One other thing I would say that I thought was a good point that I think is really positive is that let's not call them leftists. Let's just call them the climate change people, the global warming group, climate change group, really are not that interested in having the African community develop and the third world develop their natural resources. And that, according to some really well-reasoned essays by some really respected philosophers and the head of Greenpeace, amounts to economic genocide, because we need to get electricity into Africa, and you're not going to do it very quickly with solar and wind. And you're not going to get them up to speed and industrialized without it. That was your good argument. You didn't really mention it so much in rebuttal, but that was a good argument. So that's all I have to say. Anyway, Gil, did you have a quick question or comment before we go on?
It was interesting, this last week they had a...
Well, excuse me, Gil, pardon me for up here, but can we have the next group be going to the front while Gil's talking? Thank you.
We just finished a climate control conference in Bonn, Germany. And basically